The Jordan Show on YouTube.
Welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, and today we've got a really fascinating one out of Silicon Valley.
It really is. Starts with just a simple problem,
Right.
but spirals into this huge, ambitious thing.
Exactly. We're talking about the evolution of, well, the company most people know now as Block Inc.
But it didn't start there. It started as Square, tackling something very different. We're going to dig into that journey.
That's the plan. We've looked at a bunch of sources, articles, analysis, really trying to understand the story. But, more than just the company, it's about the people.
Absolutely. Who were the key players? What drove them? When and where did the big shifts happen?
And why did they make those choices? The who, what, when, where, why, and how of this whole transformation. From a little gadget to this big vision for decentralized finance.
And we think this is important for you listening because it's not just like a business school case study.
No, not at all. It's about spotting problems nobody else is really solving.
Yeah, and building resilience, finding ways to stand up to giants, and maybe even challenging how things are normally done.
So, what can you maybe take away from their playbook, from the way these folks navigated everything?
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
So, the origin story. Every big company needs one, right?
Yeah. And Square's is pretty good. It doesn't start in like a dorm room or a garage exactly.
No, it starts in an art studio, which is kind of cool.
Totally. It begins with this guy, Jim McKelvey. And he's not your typical tech founder stereotype initially. He's a glass blower.
Right, making art. And he apparently had this customer ready to buy something significant, like a $2,000 piece.
Yeah, a serious sale for an independent artist.
But he couldn't take the payment. Couldn't accept an American Express card, specifically, I think the story goes.
Right, because getting set up for credit cards back then, especially for a small operator, maybe someone without a traditional storefront, was a huge pain. Expensive terminals, complex contracts.
He lost the sale, just like that. Frustrating.
Hugely frustrating. And that specific moment, that lost sale, that's the seed.
So what does he do? He calls his friend,
And his friend happens to be Jack Dorsey.
who, people already knew, co-founder of Twitter. Big deal.
Yeah, Twitter was already huge, changing communication, but the sources suggest Dorsey was maybe looking for something else, something more tangible.
Something solving a problem in the physical world, maybe, not just bits and bytes.
Seems like it. And McKelvey's problem hit that nerve. This was San Francisco, 2009.
And the idea they landed on was, well, simple but profound. Make it dead simple for anyone to take credit cards.
Not just big stores, not just businesses with dedicated phone lines and terminals, but the artist, the coffee cart, the tutor, the farmer at the market.
Empower the little guy, basically.
Exactly. And their first solution was ingenious in its physical form.
That little white square dongle, plugged right into the headphone jack of an iPhone.
Which seems so obvious now, maybe, but was pretty radical then. It was hardware, fintech, and a design object all rolled into one.
You could really see Dorsey's influence there, right? That minimalist, clean, Apple-esque aesthetic.
Definitely. Paired with McKelvey's very real, urgent need for a tool that just worked for small sellers.
So the philosophy from day one seems pretty clear. Find the friction point for the underdog and build them an elegant tool. Make the complex seem simple.
But making it seem simple is one thing. Actually building it, that was the hard part.
Oh yeah, hardware is always hard, people say.
Yeah.
But this was more than just plastic.
So much more. You've got this tiny device, but to make it work, you need serious security. Encryption. You're handling people's money.
And you need to talk to banks, comply with all the payment card industry rules, PCI compliance, which is notoriously tricky.
Right. And you need to figure out fraud. How do you stop bad actors from using this new, easy system?
Plus the app itself, the user interface. It had to feel easy, sure, but also incredibly safe.
They had to build the whole thing. The sources call it building the entire stack. They couldn't just license a bunch of stuff and plug it together.
Yeah. They needed the hardware, the secure software, the risk models to detect fraud, the connections to the banking networks, the customer support, all of it custom built, working together seamlessly.
And that required serious talent. This is where another key person comes in, Jesse Dorogusker.
Ah, right. His background was Apple hardware.
Exactly. He came in to lead the hardware side, and that Apple experience was apparently crucial.
You can see it in the product. It
Yeah.
wasn't just functional. It looked good. It felt solid, iconic. even.
Yeah, the sources mention this idea of haptic satisfaction, that little click or feel when you swipe the card correctly.
Seems minor, but it feeds into the bigger challenge they faced, maybe the biggest one.
Which wasn't just technical.
Right, it was trust. How do you convince someone, a regular customer, to swipe their credit card into this little plastic thing plugged into some random person's phone?
Yeah, that's a huge leap of faith, isn't it? Especially back then.
Totally. It only works if the whole experience feels absolutely secure, reliable, professional. Works every single time.
So they weren't just engineering a product. The sources say they were engineering belief, building something that felt trustworthy.
That required nailing every single detail, from the hardware field to the software flow to making sure the money showed up when it was supposed to.
And they clearly managed it because Square started to grow fast.
But that growth brought its own set of problems, right? Scaling up is never easy.
No, managing that kind of growth, keeping the quality high, expanding the product, that requires a different skill set.
And this is where another really important person steps in, according to our sources.
Kara Fryer. She joined as Chief Financial Officer, CFO, but later became Chief Operating Officer, COO.
And she seems to have brought this real operational discipline, this rigor that maybe the company needed as it matured beyond that initial startup phase.
Yeah, the sources credit her heavily with professionalizing the company, getting it ready for the public markets, the IPO.
But her influence wasn't just financial or operational, was it? It was strategic too.
Very much so. She helped guide the shift from Square being just a product, the reader, to becoming a true platform for businesses.
Ah, right. Building out that suite of tools.
Exactly. They started leveraging the payment data they had, launched Square Capital.
Which offered small business loans, right? Based on their sales history with Square. Something banks often struggle to do for really small businesses.
Precisely. Then came Square Register, a more complete point-of-sale system, not just the dongle, more like what you'd see in a proper shop.
And Square Appointments for service businesses like hair salons or therapists who needed scheduling built in.
It was smart. The sources describe these as survival kits for merchants.
I like that framing. Not just taking payments, but helping them run more of their actual business.
Yeah, Square became this kind of digital backbone for its users, and Fryer was key in architecting that platform vision and making it happen operationally. You see the people making the strategy real.
So, Square is building this strong ecosystem for businesses. But meanwhile, something else is bubbling up inside the company, almost under the radar initially.
Yeah, something that would become absolutely massive on the consumer side.
Cash App.
Cash App. Started super simply, didn't it? Just peer-to-peer payments, send money to your friends.
Like Venmo, basically.
Yeah.
Or early PayPal.
Right. But it just exploded, especially, the sources point out, with a younger crowd, maybe people who were unbanked or underbanked by the traditional system.
People living on their phones, comfortable with apps, maybe more urban.
That seems to be the demographic, and Cash App just kept adding features at a crazy pace.
It wasn't just sending money anymore. Suddenly you could get your paycheck direct deposited.
Then you could buy and sell Bitcoin, which was huge.
And then stocks, fractional shares.
It turned into what people call a super app, or maybe a fintech juggernaut. It just kept growing and adding capabilities.
And it had this cultural edge too, right? It wasn't just functional.
Totally. It became a cultural icon. They had these viral marketing campaigns like hashtag Cash App Fridays, giving away money, celebrity endorsements, music video mentions.
It felt cooler than your bank. Way cooler.
Definitely. And suddenly Square, this company mostly known for helping businesses, had this enormous, hip consumer brand under its umbrella.
Which is fascinating. Shows they could innovate on multiple fronts, capture totally different markets. Again, driven by the people and teams pursuing those opportunities internally.
But success like that, it attracts attention. Sometimes unwanted attention.
From the big guys.
Yeah.
You mentioned giants earlier.
Yeah. Enter Amazon. Around 2014, Amazon decides they want a piece of this mobile payment action.
They launched their own competitor,
Yeah.
Amazon Local Register.
And on paper, wow, Amazon's scale, their brand recognition, they even came in with lower transaction fees than Square initially.
And faster deposits too, I think. Money in the bank quicker.
Yeah. It looked like a classic Silicon Valley scenario.
Yeah.
The giant comes in to crush the smaller innovator, David versus Goliath.
You'd put your money on Amazon probably.
Most people would have, but that's not what happened.
No, Amazon pulled the plug. Fairly quickly, actually. Within about a year, Local Register was gone.
Which is wild. So the big question the sources try to answer is why? How did Square fend off Amazon?
And this brings us back to Jim McKelvey, the co-founder, the glassblower. He has this concept he talks about.
The innovation stack.
Right. Explain that. It's not just one invention.
No, that's the key. It's a set of innovations, often developed internally, to solve specific problems nobody else was solving for them. And crucially, these innovations are interdependent. They lock together, rely on each other.
Okay, so it's like building with Lego bricks versus trying to copy a finished, complex sculpture.
Kind of. Amazon could easily copy the obvious bit, the reader, the price. That's like copying the surface of the sculpture.
But they couldn't copy the inside, the structure.
Exactly. They couldn't quickly replicate Square's entire stack, all those interconnected pieces built over years, the specific fraud detection algorithms tuned to Square's users, the streamlined onboarding process, the customer support designed for micro merchants, the way the hardware and software meshed perfectly.
All those hidden innovations, as McKelvey calls them, dozens of them, maybe more.
Right. It created this resilience, this unfair advantage. Amazon had scale, but Square had depth. A deeply integrated system that was hard to attack piece by piece.
So Square won that fight because of the careful, layered way they built the business from the ground up. That stack was their defense.
It's a powerful lesson, and that idea, that foundational architecture, seems to inform their next big move too.
The big rebrand, 2021. Square, the company, changes its name,
To Block Inc.
which wasn't just, slapping a new logo on things.
No, the sources are clear. This signaled a much broader vision. The company had become much more than just the original Square business.
So Block became the parent company, the umbrella.
Exactly. And under that umbrella, you have the different pieces, the different blocks, if you will.
Square is still there serving the merchants. That's one block.
Yep, the foundational business. Then Cash App, the huge consumer finance engine. That's another major block.
Okay. But then there are others that show the new direction, like Tidal.
Right, the music streaming service, which they acquired. And the focus there, interestingly, is often framed around artist empowerment. Giving artists more control, better economics, fits the theme.
And Spiral. That sounds different.
Very different. Spiral is purely focused on Bitcoin, specifically on contributing to the open source development of Bitcoin itself, funding developers, building tools for the network, almost like a nonprofit arm, but focused on Bitcoin infrastructure.
Wow. Okay. And then there's TBD.
TBD.
Yeah.
Which sounds like the most future-looking part. Their stated goal is building decentralized financial infrastructure, open protocols.
So moving beyond just using Bitcoin and Cash App to actually building the underlying rails for a different kind of financial system.
That seems to be the ambition, and you really see Jack Dorsey's personal conviction here. The sources paint him not just as a CEO anymore, but as a founder, really pursuing this kind of radical vision of a decentralized future.
Where Bitcoin isn't just another asset class, it's fundamental.
It feels like it's become the core mission for Block, or at least for Dorsey's direction for Block.
Okay, so if that's the structure now, what's the big bet? What's the ultimate goal they're driving towards based on these sources?
It really seems to be about open money, reimagining and maybe rebuilding parts of the financial system from the ground up using decentralized technologies.
So practical examples might be, building easier ways for people to run Bitcoin nodes, creating wallets, tools for developers to build DeFi apps.
All of the above. Investing heavily in the Bitcoin Lightning Network for faster payments. Exploring decentralized identity. Still supporting artists on Tidal to control their work using maybe NFTs or other blockchain tools. It's broad.
The core idea, the philosophy behind it all seems to be, what? That finance should be more like the internet. Open. Accessible.
Yeah, that financial systems like information systems want to be free. That's the bet. Moving away from closed, centralized gatekeepers towards open protocols anyone can build on or use.
It's quite a journey. From that glassblower McKelvey needing to swipe a card,
The analog problem, right?
to Dorsey and the team now working on global decentralized payment networks.
The algorithmic future. It really spans that whole spectrum.
And the stated goal sounds incredibly ambitious. Rebuilding the entire economic stack from first principles.
Taking those lessons from building their first innovation stack for Square, that resilience, that integration, and applying it to this much bigger global decentralized vision.
And you can trace it back through the people involved, McKelvey's initial problem, Dorsey's vision and design sense, Dora Gusker getting the hardware right, Fryer building the operational scale and platform.
Each person, each phase, added layers to that stack, building towards this current point.
So when you look back at the whole arc, what really stands out? From that simple dongle to this pursuit of decentralized freedom.
Well, it's definitely more than just a tech story, isn't it? It's about really seeing and solving fundamental user friction.
Yeah, finding those pain points that others ignore.
And the power of building deep, integrated systems that architecture matters more than just flashy features.
The importance of engineering trust, not just code.
And that focus on serving the underserved, whether it's a small merchant or someone locked out of traditional finance. That seems to be a consistent thread.
You know, in Silicon Valley, the mantra is often move fast and break things.
Right. But the sources suggest Square, now Block, actually succeeded by doing almost the opposite.
How so?
They built slowly and stacked carefully. That deliberate layering, building that resilient innovation stack piece by piece, that's what gave them staying power.
That's what let them fend off Amazon. That's what allows them to now pursue this huge long-term vision.
Exactly. It wasn't just about disruption for disruption's sake. It was about identifying real friction and building robust, layered solutions that created a defensible, maybe even unfair advantage over time.
So a final thought for you listening. Think about the systems around you, the processes, the things that feel clunky or leave people out.
Where's the friction in your world? What unexpected problem could be your starting point?
And how might you think about solving it not just with a single quick fix, but by building layers, by creating your own kind of innovation stack that's hard for anyone else to copy? What hidden architecture could you build?